to me what it means. Not that they don't know, but it's a horrifying thought. You're trying to articulate begotten, not made. I said, explain what it means. It had to be an American. They have the guts, the Americans. An American. When I posed the question, he said, it means sired by God. I said, what? He said, no, I don't mean that. You asked me what it means. I'm only explaining what it means. It means sired by God. But Adam was made from the dust of the ground. So I said, look, there is another Superman in your book, the Bible. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 7, book of Hebrews, that is the name of a book of the Holy Bible. Book of Hebrews, chapter 7, it speaks about Melchizedek, the high priest of Salem. Islam, the high priest of Salem, to whom Abraham gave tithes, taxes. He paid his zakat to this priest. And Paul tells us that without father, without mother, without beginning, without end, without descent, made like unto the Son of God. No father, no mother, no end, no beginning, no end, and no descent. So I said, tell me now, who can that be except God himself? Only God could have no beginning and no end. Adam had a beginning and he had an end. Jesus had an apparent, he had a beginning in the stable. We are told in the Gospel of St. Luke that when he was 8 days old, he was circumcised and named Jesus by the angel when he was in his mother's womb. So if he was in his mother's womb, that means he had a beginning. And according to the Christians, he gave up the ghost on the cross. So he had an apparent end. This man, Melchizedek, no father, no mother, no descent, no beginning, no end. I said, worship him. The man deserves to be worshipped. But nobody seems to have heard of him. It's an amazing thing. When I showed this to the learned men of Christianity, I said, look at this. And they seem to be seeing it for the first time. Never saw it before. I said, it's there. You're reading it. What are you reading? However, I'm asking the Reverend, so between these two versions, the one, the Quranic version of the birth of Jesus, and the other, the biblical version of the birth of Jesus, I asked him, which would you prefer to give to your daughter? And he bowed his head in humility and he said, I would prefer to give the Quranic version. The man was honest. He was humble. I would prefer to give the Quranic version. But people don't want to have access to this book. They don't want to see it. They don't want to touch it. I had some sick people in my office this morning. A pastor of the Pentecostal church this morning in my office. And I'm asking whether he's seen the Quran. He says, no. I said, look, you haven't read the Quran. He says, no, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to see it. I said, look, this book, 1,000 million people in the world today who take this as a book of authority. Even out of curiosity, you ought to see this book. If you want to understand the mentality of these 1,000 million people, common sense demands that you see the book. Common sense. You ought to know what the guy is thinking, what he's talking about. So I'll never touch it. He'll never touch it. It's a sick people. Sickness beyond remedy. I said, just from the worldly point of view, look, in our universities, they're teaching our children to analyze Das Kapital by Karl Marx. In the country, the book is banned. Das Kapital by Karl Marx is banned. But in our universities, our students have to study it. They want to know how to give battle to that sickness. If we are sick, the Muslims, if you are sick, if you want to understand our sickness, well, here is the book. It will tell you why we are sick, what we are talking, and why we are talking the things that we are talking. But if you don't have access to this book, if you don't want to see this book, how will you know? How are you going to give battle to this sickness? No, but it's a sickness. That sickness is a sickness beyond repair. So what makes our main difference? The main difference between the Muslim and the Christian is this divinity of Christ. Look, we say he was one of the mightiest messengers of God. He was born miraculously. He gave life to the dead by God's permission. He healed those born blind and the lepers by God's permission. We are going together. The Muslim and the Christian is going together. The parting of the ways is when the Christians say that Jesus Christ is God Almighty who came down to earth as a man. He is God incarnate, God taking human flesh. We Muslims, we say God does not incarnate. He doesn't take human form. This is our battle. So what makes him God? Look, his birth. If it is his birth, then Adam is greater than Jesus. If it is birth, Melchizedek is greater than Jesus. These are all false standards. I agree, you'll agree. These are false standards of judging. But if you bring these standards, false standards, and say, look, according to your own standards, you will lose. You will come out second best. So what makes him God? I was speaking to Reverend Dr. Morris of the Presbyterian Church in Canada, DD. He had come to South Africa on a visit, and I had taken him to the Golden Peacock in Durban. Not Tehran, here in Durban, there's a Golden Peacock, beautiful restaurant. I had taken them for lunch. And at the table, I was telling, I said, look, we believe in Jesus. All these things about this mighty messenger of God. The only real difference is this, the divinity. And for that I said, look, you have no authority. There is not a single verse in the whole vast volume of the Bible, 66 books. There is not a single verse where you find it unequivocally written, Jesus says, I am God, or where he says, worship me. There isn't. I said, there is nowhere in the Bible where he says, me and the God Almighty are one and the same person. And that tickled his memory. These words of mine tickled his memory. He said, he did. I said, where? Because I said, I am prepared to accept. I know that Jesus will never lie. If he says he is God, I am prepared to accept him as God. If he says worship me, I am prepared to worship him. I don't speak for my brethren and nor my sisters. I speak for myself. Because if there was such a thing, if Jesus made such a claim, I submit unreservedly. Where does he say? He said, no, he did say. I said, what? He said, I and my Father are one. Jesus did say, I and my Father are one. So I'm asking the Reverend Dr. Morris, DD, I said, what is the context? Context. He starts staring at me. The biryani is there. He kept on staring at me. I said, why, sir? Don't you know what is the context? I said, you see, what you quoted is the text. John chapter 10, verse 30. Text. I want the context, the text that goes with it, before or after. What is the context? And the man kept on staring at me, as if he didn't understand English. He is DD. I'm Deedat. So he said, do you know the context? He's asking me. I said, of course I know the context. So what is the context? I said, well, let us start from John, that same chapter 10, verse 23. So we start. Usually, my Christian brethren, as soon as you ask for something, they have a Bible under the arm, they take it out. I said, no, put the Bible away. You know what you are. Look, if you quoted me a verse, surely you know, man, in what sense he made that utterance. Put the Bible down. He didn't have a Bible, nor did I. So, what is the context? As a John, we start from verse 23. It reads, and Jesus walked in Solomon's porch, meaning in the temple of Jerusalem, alone. I don't know why he was tempting the devil. Walking alone. You know, he had condemned them for their formalism, their ceremonialism, the going for the letter of the law, forgetting the spirit. He said, you hypocrites, you generation of vipers, you whited sepulchres, you wicked and adulterous generation. These are all these beautiful epithets he had thrown at them. And a little while before, he had gone into the temple and he made a whip knotted whip, and he started whipping the people, and he upset the money exchanges tables and upset their money. Shh. Look, when you do things like that, people have it in for you. And the Jew